And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm meteorologist David Kramer with Alaska Weather. Thanks for joining us for our public segment of the weather. Starting off, we'll take a look at our fire weather update for tomorrow, Sunday, August 3rd. South Central will begin a warming trend. However, a little bit to the north, the interior will take a step down from hot to very warm, especially in the southern portions of the interior. Fine fuels across the interior will be dry enough to be a concern for fire behavior. Yukon Flats has the driest Duff fuels. Isolated thunderstorms in the interior present a slight risk for new ignitions. And looking at the outlook, above seasonally average temperatures in the interior will gradually moderate through the better part of next week. Precipitation should be sporadic and winds should be light. Taking a look now at our fire danger out over the state. Notice that some of those areas in the south central and the southern interior are really starting to get to low for the spruce adjective for fire danger. But as we get into the northern portions of the interior, we're seeing quite a few areas of very high and then some slight areas of extreme in the Yukon Flats area. Up along the Arctic coastline, we're seeing some areas of high and very high as well. Switching over to our watches, warnings, and advisories out for the state, we do have one watch out that is up for the Matanuska River, and that is specifically for Matanuska River near Palmer and the Butte. And then there are going to be some areas for the small streams and rivers between Sutton and Eureka. Moving on to our satellite imagery, we're going to start off in the Bering Sea, focusing on this main low pressure system. Notice here that it's pretty stationary in its movement, and it's bringing in some cloud cover to the Aleutian Islands, as well as some of the areas near southwest Alaska. Looking out over the rest of the state, we do have a weaker low in the eastern portions of the Gulf, starting to bring some rain into the Panhandle as well. So taking a look at our weather for tonight, we do have that weaker low in the eastern Gulf, bringing in some rain for the Panhandle area. High pressure out over south central, but that's not stopping some rain coming into much of south central and into the lower portions of the interior, which is helping to bring down some of that fire risk that we looked at earlier. Out over the Bering Sea, our stationary low is sitting here spinning, bringing rain to the Pribilof Islands, the rest of the Bering Sea, throughout the Aleutian Islands, and all the way out towards the southwest coastline. As we move into Sunday, that low staying right where it was, bringing continued rain to the Pribilof Islands, Aleutian Islands, and again all the way to the southwest coastline. However, out over mainland Alaska, rain will have spread to much of the mainland from south central through the interior, out by the west coast, up to the Brooks Range and Arctic coast. You can notice up farther, we have some colder air trying to make its way down towards the Arctic coastline. It is going to hang out primarily over the maritime areas, but that is going to bring some additional rainfall to areas up along the Arctic coast. Down in the Gulf of Alaska, our low pressure is still out in the eastern Gulf, bringing in some rain to the Panhandle area. As we move into Monday, high pressure starts to take over in the Gulf, but we're still going to see some lingering rain out over the Panhandle and some lighter showers over south central. Some more showers up into the interior and Brooks Range as well, and our colder air starting to shift off towards the east. Then out over the Bering Sea, our low once again staying pretty stationary here, bringing in some lighter rain showers to the Aleutian Islands and a little bit heavier rain for the Alaska Peninsula and up to the southwest coast. As we move into Tuesday, that low finally starting to shift to the south as another low moves up from the North Pacific, bringing in some heavier rain for the eastern Aleutian Islands and Alaska Peninsula. As we look out over mainland Alaska, a couple weaker lows developing here out over the northwest coastline, bringing some rain through the northwest as well as down into the Brooks Range, and then some troughing of lower pressure out over the eastern interior as well, bringing some rain to those areas. But high pressure out over the Gulf has started to clear out south central. However, we do have some rain returning to southeast. Looking at our temperature forecast with some of the cloud cover, we are seeing some colder temperatures for the Panhandle as well as south central Alaska, dropping down to near 50 degrees for south central and into the lower to mid 50s for the Panhandle. Low temperatures tonight up in the interior, getting down into the mid to upper 50s, warmest as we get farther off to the west towards Galena. Up along the Arctic coastline, temperatures primarily staying around 50 degrees. Mid 50s down much of the west coast until we get a little bit colder here along the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. Bristol Bay down into the middle 50s, and then along the Aleutians, seeing temperatures drop down to near 50 degrees. As we look into Sunday afternoon, temperatures getting up into the mid 50s for the Aleutians as well as the Pribilof Islands. For southwest coastline, getting up into the lower 60s. All throughout the interior, getting up into the 70s. Some areas out by Fort Yukon getting up to 79 degrees. near 60 for the Seward Peninsula, up along the Arctic coast, getting up into the mid-50s, up into the 60s as we get farther to the east. South Central Alaska, mid-60s are expected, and then the lower 60s for much of the Panhandle. Dropping down for Monday morning lows, seeing temperatures drop back down into the lower 50s to near 50 degrees for the Panhandle, near 50 degrees for South Central as well, down into the mid-50s for much of the interior, and then into the upper 30s for the Arctic coastline as we saw that colder air coming in from the north. Then down the west coast, lower 50s primarily expected, and then lower 50s to the upper 40s for the Aleutian Islands. Monday afternoon highs getting back up into the mid-50s for the Aleutians and Pribilof Islands. Southwest Alaska getting into the lower to mid-60s. Through the interior getting up into the 70s. And then out by the Seward Peninsula area getting into the mid-50s with Nome getting up to 63 degrees Monday afternoon. Up into the 40s primarily for the Arctic coast. Down in South Central Alaska getting up into the 60s to near 70 degrees. And the lower to mid-60s for the Panhandle. That's for Alaska weather. I'm David Kramer, and now we're going to shift over to Grant Smith, meteorologist down in Juneau, who's going to talk about some of the flooding potential and inundation mappings for the Juneau area from the Mendenhall River.
Hello everyone, this is going to be a video looking at the inundation mapping to help you get an idea of where you can gain information about flooding. So when we do make a forecast, you'll be able to quickly know whether or not you're going to be impacted in your area. So this is the water.noaa.gov/gauges/MNDA2 site. This is the Mendenhall River near Auk Bay. There are two ways to get to the inundation mapping. First off, you're on this side where you can take a look at all things Mendenhall River. Scroll down to click here for Suicide Basin Monitoring page. That takes you to our Suicide Basin Monitoring and Conditions page. You can also get to it this way from weather.gov/Juneau and then Rivers and Lakes Suicide Basin Monitoring page. Either way, once you get to this page, Juneau Glacial Flood Dashboard takes you to this page. A lot of folks have been involved with putting this particular page together. It's kind of mainly backed up by University of Alaska Southeast, but if you scroll down, lots of partners, lots of groups are involved in this, all things GLOF. So from here, click on Flood Maps up here in the upper left. That will load a map. And from here, you can see based on measurements made about whether or not you would be impacted by the flooding. So you would just zoom in on your neighborhood. Let's say you live just to the north of Thunder Mountain High School there, and you can zoom in on your house or your neighborhood, and you'll be able to tell if you could be impacted by the flooding. So this particular level, this yellow color, is for when the Mendenhall Lake is at 9 feet. And all you do is just click on the plus or the minus button, and that changes the lake level. So you can go all the way up to, let's say, 16 feet. This is where the flooding was last year. We topped out at 15.99 in 2024. And so this is what the flooding would have looked like based on the measuring in the area. We can turn the HESCO barriers on and off to tell the difference between the two. So the HESCO barriers are put up in place. So you can see there's a big difference in whether or not the flooding happens. But if you're not in this area, you just find your neighborhood and go to the lake level that you want to keep an eye on, and then turn the HESCO barriers on and off to tell whether or not you would be impacted by the flooding. And notice here, above 18 feet, that's when the HESCO barrier option doesn't change there. It's just going to be, that's where the flooding would be maximized there at 20 feet. And you can zoom in on your neighborhood, but whether or not you would be impacted. And then from there, you can use that information to be able to make decisions on if you need to prepare based on the forecast. So fast forward, when we make the forecast, let's say we have a forecast of 17 feet. Well, you can zoom in on 17 feet, zoom in on your neighborhood, and say, well, the HESCO barriers are up. Looks like I may be good, but other areas might start to see some flooding in. And if you hover your mouse over, you can see water depth estimates there, about 3 feet, 1 to 3 feet still in this area. So this is just a way to gain information about taking the forecast and then turn it into whether or not you would be impacted. So once again, this is Juneau. This is the JuneauFlood.com site. You can get to it from our Suicide Basin Monitoring page. Click on Juneau Glacial Flood Dashboard to learn more.